Hi sisters, it's the Watch Maiden, and this is part 3 of, let's see, historical writings about head coverings and the Christian woman. Part 2 just decided to cut off around 20 something minutes in, and it's because I have a iPad with it's like 16 whatever, and it doesn't hold very much. So when I try to do a video, I have to do a video, then I have to try to upload it through my computer and immediately delete the video. I can't have anything else on the iPad. It's ridiculous. I want to get some money together to get something better. Well, anyways, so I have part one's trying to upload, and then part 2 is gonna have to try to upload next after that one's done, and I have to be somewhere in like 2 hours. And so now I am trying part 3 with my iPhone. And I am using this stand thing that my husband got for my iPhone, and it looks like it's recording. So it cut me off when I was reading about the account of our Yochanan ben Zakkai, that when he had happened, and so I'm just going to read it real quick here. It happened to our Yochanan ben Zakkai that he rode upon an ass and went out of Jerusalem, and his disciples went after him. He saw a young woman gathering barley corns out of the dung of the Arabian cattle. When she saw him, she covered herself with her hair and stood before him. But this covering was made use of, not by choice, but by force, through her poverty. She having no other, this was not the custom of the nation, nor was the hair given to a woman for a covering in this sense, nor used by them as such, unless by Eve before the fall, but is rather an indication that they want another covering for their head, it not being so decent that their long hair should be seen. The Jewish women used to esteem it an immodest thing for their hair to be seen, and therefore they took care as much as possible to hide it under another covering. I find that interesting, and wondering what Paul meant regarding the hair, if it's to be seen or not, since he obviously was a Jew and such. And it seems here that they were covering all their hair. I want to really research that some more. Anyhow, there's a story, a woman whose name was Kimhith. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. She had 7 sons, and they all ministered in the high priesthood. The wise men said unto her, What hast thou done? Why art thou so worthy? And she replied to them, all my days, the beams of my house never saw the plaits of my hair. And that is, they were never seen by any person, even within her house. And if I'm remembering this story correctly, I remember that she was very pious and very about her modesty. She would like put a blanket over and just even comb her hair and groom her hair under that blanket so as not to have even the ceiling see her hair. That's how seriously she took this modesty thing. Now, in the Jameson, Fawcett, and Brown commentary, it says, not that she does not need an additional covering. Nay, her long hair shows she ought to cover her head as much as is possible. This will ought to accord with nature. Okay, let's see here. We've got... and then let's see, Albert Barnes, that commentary, he's got a lot of stuff in here. I'm taking little excerpts out, and he was born in 1872 and died in 1951, so this is pretty, fairly recent, and so he was still teaching this, and he said, that is, with her head uncovered, that is, with the veil removed which she usually wore. It would seem from this that the women removed their veils and wore their hair disheveled when they pretended to be under the influence of divine inspiration. This was the case with the pagan priestesses, and in so doing the Christian women imitated them. On this account, if on no other, Paul declares the impropriety of this conduct. It was, besides, a custom among ancient females, and one that was strictly enjoined by the traditional laws of the Jews, that a woman should not appear in public unless she were veiled. So this again is showing that it was public and it was in church, and it was women veiled. That's just what they did. dishonoreth her head, shows a lack of proper respect to man, to her husband, to her father, to the sex in general. The veil is a token of modesty and subordination. It is regarded among Jews and everywhere as an emblem of her sense of inferiority and rank and station. It is the customary mark of her sex, and that by which she evinces her modesty and sense of subordination. To remove that is to remove the appropriate mark of such subordination. And it is a public act by which she thus shows dishonor to the man. And as it is proper that the grades and ranks of life should be recognized in a suitable manner, so it is improper that, even on pretense of religion and of being engaged in the service of God, these marks should be laid aside. It's very important, this distinction thing here. For that is even all one as if she were shaven. As if her long hair, which nature teaches her she should wear for a veil, should be cut off. Long hair is, by the custom of the times and of nearly all countries, a mark of the sex, an ornament of the female, and to be judged beautiful and comely. To remove that is to appear in this respect like the other sex, and to lay aside the badge of her own. This, says Paul, all would judge to be improper. You yourselves would not allow it. And yet to lay aside the veil, the appropriate badge of the sex, and her sense of subordination, would be an act of the same kind. It would indicate the same feeling, the same forgetfulness of the proper sense of subordination. And if that is laid aside, all the usual indications of modesty and subordination might be removed also. So he's pointing out that once you lay that aside, then everything else kind of starts to go. Not even under religious pretenses, therefore, are the usual marks of sex and of propriety of place and rank to be laid aside. Due respect is to be shown in dress and speech and deportment to those whom God has placed above us, and neither in language, in attire, nor in habit are we to depart from what all judge to be proprieties of life, or from what God has judged and ordained to be the proper indications of the regular gradations in society. And he says in 1 Corinthians 11:6, for if the woman be not covered, if her head be not covered with a veil, let her also be shorn. Let her long hair be cut off. Let her lay aside all the usual and proper indications of her sex and rank in life. If it is done in one respect, it may with the same propriety be done in all. So if you're going to do it, just might as well just go the full course. Let her be covered with a veil. Let her wear the customary attire indicative of modesty and a sense of subordination. Let her not lay this aside, even on any pretense of religion. But the woman is the glory of man. All her comeliness, loveliness, and purity are therefore an expression of his honor and dignity, since all that comeliness and loveliness were made of him and for him. This, therefore, ought to be acknowledged by a suitable manner of attire. And in his presence, this sense of her inferiority of rank and subordination should be acknowledged by the customary use of the veil. Should she appear with the symbol of modesty and subjection, which are implied by the head being covered. Her rank is therefore honorable, though it is subordinate. It is, in some respects, the more honorable, because it is subordinate, and as her happiness is dependent on him, she has the higher claim to his protection and his tender care. The whole of Paul's ideas here is that her situation and rank as subordinate should be recognized by her at all times, and that in his presence it was proper that she would wear the usual symbol of modesty and subordination, the veil. All women who pray or prophesy or pray in public should be veiled. There can perhaps be no doubt that the word power has reference to a veil or to a covering for the head. And then he states, because of the angels, a woman in the public assemblies and in speaking in the presence of people should wear a veil, the usual symbol of modesty and subordination, because the angels of God are witnesses of your public worship, Hebrews 1:13, and because they know and appreciate the propriety of subordination and order in public assemblies. The ladies of Persia may throw some light on the subject. The headdress of the women is simple. Their hair